Alon, how did this break down and continue to break down so spectacularly? Because on the surface, this deal makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. And look, there is still an hour and a half left where BHP could save this. But as you pointed out, it seems very unlikely that they would. In order for them to do that, they would have to go hostile, which they don't want to, because they'd have to buy the whole thing and take on all the risk of dismantling the business. I mean, the deal seemed to be doomed from the start because of the structure. They eventually, after raising the offer by 25%, with the latest bid, they seem to answer the Anglo's concerns around price, but structure was the sticking point. It left Anglo shareholders, according to Anglo management, with too much risk, and even with BHP seemingly offering all sorts of mitigations. A break fee, for example, it couldn't get across the line, couldn't convince Anglo shareholders. But this really was quite a difficult deal to start off with. I mean, it was really a case of buying the house to get the garage or get the Ferrari in the garage, and BHP was going to have to buy this business up, even with the assets in South Africa being spun off. They were still going to have to sell off assets themselves, really, just to keep the high value copper business that they were after.
Yeah, just from my perspective as a reformed investment banker, this was a terrible bid by BHP. You don't make the seller go through all that work just to sell to a buyer. You make the buyer do the work, in my opinion. That's part of the premium they're paying for here. So BHP wanted only selected assets of Anglo American, their copper business. Do you think another buyer would have the similar view of that BHP had? So do you think or are there buyers out there that would just buy the whole thing?
Well, I think BHP has actually done other potential suitors a big favor here. They've effectively set the blueprint. Other buyers now know what Anglo's red lines are. They know what their price expectations are, and they can craft a bid accordingly. And BHP, we know, did not want exposure to South Africa. They extricated themselves from South Africa several years ago after they spun off South 32. They didn't want to get involved in the country again, and they didn't have to want to manage stakeholders as they dismantled the business. But other suitors may have a different attitude. There are other still major mining companies which have a presence in South Africa, a significant presence, one in particular, which is Glencore. So there are potentially others in the wings, and I wouldn't rule out a bid for Anglo from others. But it's interesting. What we're going to see now is, presumably, if the deal does fall away, the pressure has now shifted to Anglo management. They've set out this radical restructuring plan. They will now need to deliver, and they will want to show early wins here to keep shareholders happy.
Exactly, that's where I was going to go. So you were looking at their platinum business, their Kumba iron ore business, De Beers, their diamond business. Now they set out a structure to also divest some of those assets too. Do they have to now actually do that? Does that put them in a pretty precarious position, and are they in a fire sale to some extent position now?
All very fair questions, and I think the answer to the question is yes. They've committed to it, and now they need to execute on it. The BHP bid unlocked value in the stock. It's significantly higher than where it was before the bid was made. It's now trading pretty much at parity on an earnings multiple basis with the likes of BHP. It's more expensive than Rio. So the valuation gap that Anglo shareholders have long lamented has been closed without a bid premium in place. BHP, or Anglo shareholders rather, really need to deliver on the value unlock that they've promised here with their plan. So they won't be able to rest on their laurels. They're going to have to take action quickly, and they need to hope that the cycle remains in their favor, because they need to sell off a lot of assets over a short period of time. They're aiming here to do it in about 18 months, and it's a big deal. It's a complicated series of transactions that needs to take place.
Alon, let's step back here and take a look at the copper market, because that's really what BHP was looking for. Can you give me kind of the 30-second pitch on just the global copper market? How should we think about this?
It's a market with great long-term fundamentals. The thesis really is that supply can't keep pace with demand, which is set to climb significantly over the course of the next several years. Due to applications around the energy transition, and it's become increasingly difficult to build new mines. It's more expensive, it's more risky. You're either having to build in jurisdictions without established infrastructure, where there's high political and country risk, and then for those assets that do exist in more kind of established, safer jurisdictions, let's say the US, for example, you have your own challenges there, which is permitting, which can take years and years and delay projects, as we've seen time and time again. So the sector is increasingly turning towards M&A, buying instead of building, because the hurdle rate for new copper projects is very high.
We've also seen a lot of dislocations too. I mean, short squeezes are not new in the metal market, but a lot of dislocations in terms of where the copper is going and then how to trade it, whether you're looking at Shanghai or London or US inventories. Why is that happening to copper right now?
Yeah, it's certainly notable that the price has moved as rapidly as it has and as high as it has over such a short period of time, particularly when the macroeconomic backdrop globally isn't all that positive. It's not as if we're off to the races. Certainly in the biggest consumer, which is China or elsewhere. So there's certainly an element here of speculative interest, we think, in the space. There's been investors have become piling into the space, and some have been caught wrong-footed, which has evidently led to squeezes on the price, which sent it north, of $5 a pound recently. Some of that is coming out, but I think the market is pretty built up around the fundamentals for copper long term, and there's a case here of fear of missing out, and it looks like it's probably going to have a decent amount of support, even if it has run probably a little bit ahead of fundamentals in the near term.